At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Jesus Barabbas or Jesus who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message: "Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I've suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "And which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas?" "No, I'm sorry. Which of the two do they want?" "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crime has he committed?" But they shouted all the louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood. It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "His blood is on us and on our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. This is the word of the Lord. We've been kind of on a holy pathway over the last few weeks during this Lenten season, tracing the steps of Jesus to the Garden of Gethsemane, the arrest, now the trial. We'll move to the cross, and then the empty tomb in the next couple of weeks. It's kind of a holy pathway, I think. Time for us to just be very quiet and remember and reflect. In this one, I think the key question that Pilate asks is the question we ought to have before us. Where Pilate, kind of at his wit's end with the crowd of the Jews and their demands, he says, "Okay, what shall I do with Jesus?" Well, that's a question we all have to answer. What will you do with Jesus? How will you respond to Jesus, who is called the Messiah, the Christ, the Anointed One? It's interesting, always interesting to me to see the documentaries that come out almost every year from one source of expertise or scholars or whatever about Jesus. You know, they always have these things, you know, who is the real Jesus? What was he really all about? And they all give their opinions. It's interesting. Almost 2,000 years later, people are still asking that question. Who really is Jesus? And what difference does it make? What shall I do with Jesus? Pilate asked. Let's look at the story. It's going to meet the main characters. Again, you kind of ask, okay, who's involved here? What's going on? Why is this happening? What's behind the scenes? Enter into this story. So you got Pontius Pilate. Pilate's the Roman governor. Now, Rome governed the whole Western world at the time, and the Caesar in Rome established the governors over various regions. So Pilate is the governor of that area, the southern part of what we know as Israel. Very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin, I'll explain that in a minute, made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Now let me show you something. Interestingly, for a long time, scholars questioned whether there really was a historical Pontius Pilate. But in 1961, in Caesarea, along the sea, a stone was discovered as archaeologists were digging, as they do in places of history like that. And I don't know if you can make it out, but this part right here, you can see, and it's in Greek letters, so they're a little different than English, but they're similar enough that you can make it out. I-L-A-T, and then that's a U, Pilatus, Pilate. You get a little bit of this, an I-U-S, and then it all is blurred out. Put the P-O-N-T before it, and you got Pontius Pilate. And here is a J and a U and a D. And if you see a C and a T, and here's an E, basically you have, if the whole thing was there, prefect or governor of Judea. Tiberius, you can make a T-I-B, Tiberius, the Caesar, the Roman emperor. So this was a stone that was dedicated to Tiberius and mentions Pontius Pilate, prefect of Judea.